So your site has a 500 error or it won't come up. Don't panic. You can fix this. Let's get into it. So when your site has an issue and it won't come up, sometimes in WordPress you see a white screen or a 500 error in the browser like this. Sometimes you'll see something completely different. It varies depending on the server and what's installed and what's running and what browser you use and all that. But what I'm showing you now is the standard 500 error you'll see in Chrome. When you see this error, it typically means that there was an issue with an update, a plugin conflict, a theme issue, something like that, or that someone went in and jacked up one of your files, like a PHP file. Somebody went in and edited WP config and typed in the wrong thing or deleted the wrong thing, and it broke things. Now, finding that issue can be difficult, especially when your site is completely down. So let's get into what to look for and what to do to resolve the problem. Now, obviously, the first thing you're going to want to do is back up your data. You need to make sure that you've got a complete, reliable backup of your data before you do anything else. Because some of the things we're going to do here could potentially break things, or you may just want to restore the backup because it's just easier. So here's the typical cPanel interface for backing up data. Simple, right? You just go to backup in cPanel, you click on home directory, you click on your database, easy. There's really nothing to it. When you've backed up your data, you'll get a couple of files like this. One of them will be the SQL backup file, which you'll need to extract with something like 7-zip. It's easier than using the default Windows stuff. You'll get a SQL file. You can open that up and review it. You'll need something like Notepad++ if it's big. Then you're going to have a big tar.gz file here that you're going to have to extract. So it's going to extract the tar file, then you're going to have to extract the tar file out into the actual, folder structure that's compressed within it. That typically takes a while to do if you have a larger site. The important thing here is that you review your data. You make sure that you look at it, you check it, it's right. All your plugins are there, your theme is there, any other files that you expect to be there are there. That's the crucial thing. People skip this, and then they're in trouble because, oops, they thought they had a backup, but the backup doesn't work, or it's missing data that they needed. The other thing to be sure about is that the backup that you have was functional when it was taken. So in other words, if you know your site was up yesterday and the backup ran yesterday, you should be good. If the backup ran overnight and you're not sure when the problem started happening, you might want to look at an older backup that came from a date in which you knew your site worked. That way you're not stuck in a position of, oh, my backup was corrupted as well, and you go to the trouble of restoring it. Now, I'm not going to go through all the steps of restoring a backup and doing all that because it varies too much. One server is you do it one way, one's another way. Sometimes it's a matter of you just click a button in an interface that has a date and it says restore this date. That's fine. The other thing you obviously have to keep in mind is sometimes you don't want to restore a backup because you're going to lose whatever happened from the time the backup was created to the time you restore it. The reason I'm bringing up backups first is because it's just really important to make sure that you've got good, reliable data before you move forward with any next steps. I can't stress that enough. It's critical. Now, assuming that you have a backup and that the data is all there, the next step is to decide if you want to just restore and sort of resolve the problem that way, or if you want to try to debug the issue. Restoring is easier and faster, but again, you might lose something if anything happened in between. If you haven't done anything on your website since it went down or between the time of the backup and when it down, just restore. Don't try to debug it and figure it out and all that stuff. Just restore and then go very carefully step by step to try to figure out what broke it. So if you've got 10 plugins to update, do them one at a time. And then if you figure out which one broke it, you can just go into your server and rename that folder. So if it's Yoast that breaks it, you can just rename the Yoast folder to Yoast_old or whatever, and that will disable Yoast temporarily so that you can debug further. If you've restored your backup and things still don't work. Or shame on you, you don't have a backup. Or you can't restore a backup because there's been too much happening on the site between the time of the last backup and now. Then that brings us to step 2. Now, step 2 is all about trying to debug the issue yourself, trying to figure out what went wrong and how you can fix it. A common issue with 500 errors, or a common thing that causes 500 errors, is when a file gets changed on the server. Now, of course, there are so many things that can go wrong and so many files that could be modified that could break a site and cause a 500 error. But let's just go over one really basic scenario. So here we can see a page that's got a 500 error. It's broken. Now we're going to go to cPanel and check out, okay, here are the files in the root level of WordPress. Now, sort it by last modified, go to the most recent file, that's error log, okay, whatever. Then index.php. That's been recently modified. That should almost never be modified. Well, let's go look at it. Okay, let's look at the code here. Well, there's some gibberish after PHP, shouldn't be there. Delete, 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 save. Go back to the page, refresh the page, site's back up. Problem solved. Great. Now, this could be your index.php, wp-config, wp-admin. It could be anything. It could be any of these files. Sorting it by date helps you get a sense of when it was last modified, and that might indicate which one was changed and broke the site. Now you can take this further and go and look in plugins, go and look in your theme, all that, to try to find whatever file was recently manipulated that could have caused this error. That can take a lot of time, but it's part of the debugging process. It's how you figure out what's going on. When you can't get to WordPress admin, when you can't get to anything with a nice visual interface, you're going to need to go through cPanel or FTP or however you connect to your file system to review the files and try to manually debug what's going on. Here's a quick list of things to look at when you have a 500 error. Corrupt htaccess files. Again, through cPanel, look at the root folder. You may have to go up to the little gear in the top right-hand corner and click Show Hidden Files. PHP memory limits. php.ini will specify memory limits for your server. You'll need to contact your host in some instances to be able to change that. You may be able to do it manually. Just if it says 32 megabytes, go up to 64 megabytes and see if it works. You typically can't break anything with that unless you mistype something. But if you need help with that, Google has a million resources, and also just contact your host. Issues caused by faulty plugins. If you can't get into WP admin, renaming the folder is an option. You can rename each folder one by one until your site comes back up. One of the tricky things with this is caching can cause an issue there. So if your site is being cached, especially if it's server-side caching like Lightspeed or something like that, you may need to, through cPanel or some other interface, manually clear your cache every time you rename a folder in order to be able to see it properly. That in that sense that you're not seeing a cached version of it. That's time-consuming, but it may come down to that. Another thing that you can do to expedite, rename 10 folders at a time. So if you've got 20 plugins, do half of them. Rename them _old. And then if that fixes the problem, you know it's one of those 10. And then you just one by one, change the names back. This is not really the best way to go about this, but you've eliminated other better options at this point. Your theme may be broken. Switch to the default theme. How do you do that if you're unable to get WP admin? Again, just rename the folder for your other theme. If you've got a child theme, rename that and the parent theme folder, and that should switch to the next available theme. That will help you eliminate the theme as being a possibility here. You could have corrupt WordPress files. So you can replace the WP includes and WP admin folders with fresh versions from WordPress.org just by downloading the zip file from WordPress.org and extracting those out over top of the existing ones. It won't break your site or do anything harmful. Those files are just core files that can be overwritten and replaced with new versions. That can help you if something has gone wrong in core, although that is very rarely the problem because nothing should be touching those files. The last thing that you could check is just if there's a hosting problem on the server. It might be time to yell at your host and say, hey, look, the site's down, fix it. I'm telling you, I can't remember the number of times that a 500 error has been nothing that I could have fixed. It's just a server issue. They could have memory limit issues. They could be out of storage space in their server container. They may have improperly configured something in PHP on their end that you have no control over. Hosting is the last ditch effort. Now, if you've got a good host, no problem. They're going to fix that for you, lickety-split. If you're on GoDaddy or Bluehost or any of these other ones that just do not have the best support, you're going to be in trouble, and it might be time to think about moving away if they can't help you resolve this quickly. So that's another reason why you need to have a great offsite backup solution. You want to be able to migrate away. You don't want to be at their mercy in a time like this because you don't have a backup. But anyway, that's another video. So step one, make sure you've got your backup. If you can restore it. See if that fixes the problem. It should. If it doesn't, go through the process of looking for files that had been changed. Go through the process of renaming plugin folders and theme folders. Go through the process of looking to see if anything in WordPress core has been corrupted or manipulated. If all else fails, contact your host. Now, you can make an argument, and a good one, that you should just contact your host right away. And if you've got a good host, just do that. Just contact your host right away and say, hey, can you fix this for me? A lot of times they just will. They'll just go in and find the problem for you. I didn't go through looking at error logs. Error logs will sometimes tell you what the cause of the 500 error is, but a lot of the times they just won't. There won't be anything in there to look at, and you'll end up spending hours trying to parse error logs and get nowhere. It's just faster to do the other steps I've outlined. If you are more advanced and you feel comfortable debugging through an error log, check that first, because you may just find the problem within minutes and be able to pinpoint the plugin. So here's a quick example of that. Here you can see that this error log is showing me that something broke on line 14 of index.php. Now, it wasn't line 14 that was wrong. It was the first line, but that's how the error logs work in this case, where it's going down to that line where it actually throws the error. But anyway, it tells you to look at index.php, which is the important thing. So by doing so, we'll know, okay, well, that's where the problem is. Go in there, check the file, find the error, fix the problem. So if you're comfortable with doing that, that could save you a ton of time. Now, what if you're not comfortable with doing it? Or what if you're not sure exactly what I'm talking about with any of this? Well, there's a couple ways you can go. As I mentioned, you can talk to your host. Sometimes the host, will fix these issues for you, or at least can point you in the right direction and save you some time. If that's not the case, you may want to reach out to a WordPress maintenance company or a developer or programmer to help you resolve the issue. At Barrelroll, we do this kind of work for our members, so you could take a look at us at gobarrelroll.com and see if we might be a good fit. We do only work with our members, so you would have to sign up for a membership plan and join in order for us to take a look at this for you. And there's an onboarding process. It takes us a little bit of time. If you have an emergency, you might want to look at something like Codable.com. Upwork.com, something along those lines might help you get in the right direction. Hope everything gets resolved, and if you have any comments, please leave them below. Thanks.